Well, hello everybody. Breaking news. Colombia, in the wee hours of the morning here, goes full on socialist. In fact, they elect a regime leader from the days of extremism, much the same as what happened to Venezuela. And it's shocking that Colombia would see, after going through such radicalism just in recent decade history, that after all these successes would go backwards. But they did. And you can thank the royal family, the Green New Deal. Colombia now is going to phase out coal and oil, half of its economy, folks. Half of its economy under leftist extremism. Young voters, believing that's the salvation of Colombia, are going to find that it's going to be the next Venezuela. Sad, sick, outrageous, but it's happened. And USA ties to Colombia in South America, its strongest ally in South America. So are the days of that are going to be gone. And unfortunately, folks, Joe Biden probably likes this. You're going to see Bernie Sanders, who swears by the Green New Deal that this is the way to go. This UK deal orchestrated by the royal family. And again, who are all these regimes tied to? Old, former colonial superpowers. We're in bad shape, folks. Real bad shape. I have much more to share and go through later today. I completed lots of works last night. Read a lot. Still have much more to do, but I put in some big hours. I posted about it. And where it's taking us, I don't think that France and UK are winnable, not in the least. We're going to have to go back to the USA, even under Joe Biden. That's where it's going to take us. It's just moving the key segments of the American population that can put the pressure on Joe Biden. We've got to try. I don't know, it's scary. It's scary what's happening right around the world, and likely to happen in Canada. I've chased back the first presidential orders in Security Council that presidents came up with. The first being in reference to New Zealand. That's who held the presidency in that month and in that time. The first of several that they're referencing. When I pull out those references in 1994, it leads me right to New Zealand and UK. Their communications throughout that month were massive amounts, all in sequestering and keeping from the public any reference to genocide, cultural genocide, children's genocide, in relation to Rwanda and the Belgium army and what they did there. Specifically, a lot like Canada in its Métis, Inuit, and Canadian Indian card system, numbered citizens. Folks, what they did there was, after World War I, Germany's colonial assets, they lost. They were transferred to France. Under France and Belgium took the reins. Underneath France, they took the reins, and they turned around and pitted the First Peoples of Rwanda against each other. They created a card system based off the Indian Act, Indian card numbers, but they also had what would be like Métis. They pitted them together and said, you guys fight over governance, you guys fight over the land. And of course, put them to war and genocide. They orchestrated, created it. Now, in relation to June 28th, all those things are coming back to light. All the rules imposed on all those genocidal countries. New Zealand, Australia, exact same, if not as bad as Canada, but just as bad as Canada in their own ways. Some differences, some better, some worse, but their genocides are much the same on the lines of Canada's. And it looks like this group of colonials and their jewels, so to speak, don't want this stuff coming to light, because it will highlight theirs. So we've got to get creative. The United States, with monumental changes, monumental civil rights accomplishments, I still say, regardless of Joe Biden and the lunatic Bernie Sanders and his love of the crown, clear love of the crown by Joe Biden, we've got to find a way to appeal to the African American, at least Linda Thomas Greenfield, who is the UNSC rep. I don't see us winning against France or UK. All of those attachments in that penmanship system for a P3 vote to sequester from the public the truth or any reference of genocides, especially children's genocide in colonial countries such as Canada, so outrageous. We're going to have to go to the States. It's got to be won by the United States. We've got to get it to be a P3 of Russia, China, and USA. I know it seems like an impossible task, but it can be done, and it has to be done. So that's the work I'm going to do. I'm going to write on those lines. Our team is going to go over some key treaties made between Canada and USA over absolutely the history before Canada was a country, but the United States was. This is in relation to Great Britain and the United States of America. All the monumental great achievements America made against that crown. And we're going to take that narrative. We're going to move a set peoples in America, try anyway, and try to move the American government and try to remind them that these are agreements you made. You did the right thing at one time in history, many times in history, in fact, and in recent history. It's time to revisit that, regardless of presidential executive power, regardless of presidential racial beliefs. We're going to have to challenge it. We're going to have to try and break it. And I don't know, but you know what? There's more than 200 people that surround the president, are a part of that administration. There's checks and balances. We've got to win it in basically 1 week's time here, less than a week. We have this week to get that together so that we can see this done publicly for the entire world, as was done 1 year ago from June 28th, 2021. They're smart. These countries aren't stupid. These colonial countries aren't stupid. Justin Trudeau is not stupid. They're just evil, folks. They're evil. They're blatantly in their own superiority. They believe that you won't be able to do anything about it. You, the people, will never be able to figure it out, and they can keep it in secrecy. I can tell you what I've learned, folks, is what is unbelievable to me. That powerful nations like the United States of America, powerful nations like the Russian Federation today, can sit there in a loser called the United Kingdom, a loser. They were a loser. They would be West Germany today. Think about that. West Germany. So would France. They would be part of the West Germany Reich. That's what they would be. If it wasn't for the United States of America and the former Soviet Union, which is the Russian Federation today. There is no disputing that. Even China, it wouldn't be today. And folks, to understand what I'm talking about here, this rotating membership of the United Nations Security Council, post-World War II, all the Axis powers that officially lost the war, lost all their colonial attachments, absolutely every single one. Now the United Kingdom and France agreed to give it all up, all of it up. There shouldn't be countries like Canada, like New Zealand, like Australia, to be the worst of the worst, that swear their allegiance and give away their country's sovereignty as a UN state to the United Kingdom. There shouldn't be countries who can rotate on a presidency and always pay it forward to the United Kingdom. It means the United Kingdom constantly has more representation on the world stage by about a factor of 3 to 1 comparatively to the United States of America and the Russian Federation. How is that even possible today? That is not the promise made to the American people or the Russian people forever and a day since 1945 till today, during this video, in the month of June 2022, June 20th, 2022. This is not supposed to be possible. So how can they continue to do this? And they do it behind all your backs, the whole world's backs. We all pay our UN dues through our United Nations country, 193 of them, tremendous amount of money, and in all these sub-organ designations, and yet this happens where the USA is reduced, Russia's reduced, China's reduced. Does that seem right to you folks? Does it seem right that there's still genocides going on today, largely led by allies from World War II who got superpowers on the world stage, that only got those superpowers because they promised absolutely to end that bullshit? And they haven't. They have not ended any of it. And in fact, through the rotating power of the United Nations Security Council, 2 of those members see extra amount of representation, meaning they're getting extended presidency because they own the constitution paid forward of said countries who have to repatriate the United Kingdom or France on that stage. It rotates every month, but honestly, guys, in a 12-month rotating stage, you see the Security Council being represented for the United Kingdom through its sub-nations, 3-1 on the USA, 3-1 on the Russian Federation, 3-1 on China. It means it takes all 3 of those countries to equal the UK, and almost the same amount for France. Does that seem right to any of you? When France was decimated, they were completely taken over by Germany, and it was the resources and life force of all the allies of World War II that freed them, meaning a huge amount of contributions of American, Canadian, and the list goes on and on, of allies' lives to free them. We just went through Normandy. We just patriated it this month for celebration. Nobody celebrated it. Like, those American lives meant nothing. Those Canadian lives meant nothing. And I'm not running LGBTQ down, but why patriate that all month and then ignore the fundamental civil right that led to LGBTQ rights? Why do we ignore San Francisco, 1945, American-based, just to watch UK get all of its power back to be 3 times more powerful in swinging the narrative of the United Nations Security Council than the United States itself, who pays the absolute most amount of money. Even China's paying more than the United Kingdom. United Kingdom takes. Canada has an extremely large trade deficit with the United Kingdom. But we say it's okay. All the Canadian citizens say it's okay. It's normal. It's normal. Folks, we have monumental work to do. We have to challenge the entirety of the United Nations Security Council. I'm almost done my readings, but it's looking like 92% that I'm going to have to go after the United States to get them one on board. I don't believe that either France or UK is going to be the solution in any way, shape, or form. There's too many atrocities. There's too many jewels that they own and control. They're making them very wealthy, when the reality is they shouldn't be wealthy at all. They're doing it by lying, cheating, and stealing, and also doing it in the absolute opposite of democracy. It's in full autocracy. And people embrace this. So citizens of those countries embrace it. They think it's normal to worship a divinity of a politician, to make a man or woman a god over all of you. And I don't see how that is anything that should be in the world today. I don't. I liken it to worse than communism. I don't agree with communism, but it's not as bad as communism. Or, I mean, communism's not as bad as that. When you have a savage human being assigned to all of these countries, you have a slave class assigned to all of these countries, and those people are never to achieve any status beyond that. Very, very near impossible to get out. Meaning we're run by a country not by those most qualified, those who had the best in business, or those who had the best ideas, or had a system in place that worked out the best. Not real true competition. We're bringing forward those of elite status by birthright or by loyalties to a regime. Well, that's not going to yield a better country. That's going to yield a shit country. And I don't see that any different than socialist regimes, like what's happening to Colombia now. Look where all the Venezuelan refugees largely went. Colombia, folks. Can you imagine being devastated, fleeing for your lives to the neighboring country just to watch that country flop into the country you just left? Can you imagine giving up 10 years of your life just starting to get set up and then getting decimated there too? Ugly, ugly, ugly. If you think the border crisis in the southern states is bad today, you can multiply that by a factor of probably 10 over the next couple of years. And Joe Biden is way out to lunch. But we're going to see what we can do this week. I'm going to go after the United States, it looks like. I have 3 more readings to do. The problem is every time you grab one of these resolutions and you open up the history of it, the communications, you end up getting another 200-300 pages of reading to do, and you have to go through it and apply it to your situation now. Monumental work. My eyes are fried. They were fried last night. They'll be fried today, but the work goes on. We go on. We've got to hit it harder. We've got to do it. Not official with the United States yet. I'm going to read more all the way through to 2001. Those are the dates that the United Nations Security Council is applying in presidential resolutions of term presidencies of the UNSC, and I have to go through each one and find out what exactly they were talking about, what exact rules they were putting forward in relation to colonial jewels, in genocide, what's sequestered and why, and what relation. And it's not looking good, folks, that's for sure. It looks like they don't want any of these sequestered genocides brought to light, so they're going to try and keep the Canadian Indian genocide off public records, off public debate, June 28th, 2022. Even though we want it in 2021, it looks like countries who are just as guilty as Canada are all grouping together under the banner of UK and probably France. Probably, it's looking like it, folks. Belgium, the first one I pull out. Wow. 3 more to go through. I'll let you all know later today. God bless everybody. Thanks for following. It's never over until good people do nothing. So we're not dead in the water. I wish I still had my Trump train that the media made fun of me about. Because when I wanted to hit a UNSC rep in the United States, I would move the average American. And when the average American, if I could get 1,000 average Americans to hit the UNSC rep for the United States of America, it did make a difference. It did scare them because it's their own citizens saying, hey, what the F? What is this? What is this? What is this? What the hell are you doing? And then they get scared because then they start going, ooh, what does the administration say? They say, oh, don't highlight this with the average American. We're going to be in big trouble. There's checks and balances. That's the 200 and some plus Americans who work around and underneath the President of the United States every day of the week. Doesn't matter which party. And when they start highlighting, you can't do this, you can't do that, they get real scared. They don't want to lose their political power. So they often will capitulate. And that's what we got to find a way to do. And I'll get into more of that. I'm working with our residential school genocide team, particularly an old treaty between the United States and Canada that was over England in the United States of America before Canada was a country, but overlaps both First Peoples. And I believe that treaty alone is the key to winning this with the United States. And if we can move enough American Indian chiefs and get them active with the American government right now in this week, I think we can move the needle and we can see the United States go, no. especially when you show them their achievements, what they've completed, how they're not like the others, and how they've addressed their issues. I think we can move them. I hope. All we can do is try. I hate that we're down to the wire. I hate that this is the last week before residential school genocide, specifically Children's Day of Genocide in Armed Conflict. But I have no choice. This is the fight. This is what we have to do. God bless everybody. Share, share, share. Get it out there. It's so you know, just in case something happens, things go wrong. You just never know that this is a timeline, a true historic timeline. And people need to know something does happen, somebody continue it down the road. I'm going to publish all the works. I'm going to publish that publicly and everything we address the UNSC exactly as we're going forward. However I make that choice, I'm going to make that choice with the data, with historical history, with what we have in our tools in our belt right now. That's all we can do and try to win it. Many academics showed me how you can. It's tough. I'm not going to say it's easy or we have a winning chance here, but there's always a chance. There's always a chance. There's always the fighter's chance, the puncher's chance that they can strike that blow at the right time and change everything. And that's all we can do is try. God bless everybody. Share, share, share. Credible, real, and verifiable. Thank you. Bye now.